And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tina Brock, the host of Into the Absurd and the producing artistic director at the Idiopathic Radiculopathy Consortium here in Philadelphia. Happy holidays to you and your family. We are wishing you the very best of days ahead as we welcome 2021. And we'll be here for you Saturdays at 5 p.m. talking with the creators and the folks who are thinking about and doing very interesting work in the community as we all grapple with new times, new ways, and new means. I'm so glad you're here today. If you're joining us on the Zoom room, you can please put your comments in the chat box for Dr. Tony Errichetti and Ginny Drda. And if you're on Facebook Live, welcome to you. If you are on the IRC's mailing list, you get a link every week from us that gives you the Zoom room link, if that's the way you like to come in. But Facebook Live is always an option for you as well. And you can find past episodes archived on the IRC's Facebook page and as well on the IRC's YouTube channel. And when you're there, we hope that you will subscribe and help us to spread the word. We're going to be here Saturdays at 5 p.m. for the future, even when we get back onto that stage, whenever that may be in 2021. On today's show, we're going to talk about narrative medicine with two folks who have a huge amount of experience in this area, Dr. Tony Errichetti, who is the director of doctor-patient communications at the National Board of Osteopathic Medicine here in Philadelphia. Since 1992, he's been working in the area of standardized patient communication and education. And along with his collaborator, Ginny Drda, who is an educator and an actor with over 15 years of experience working and combining the art of theater with the art of medicine. And they have a wonderful workshop and a website that we'd love for you all to visit. And we'll put that information up there called Listening to Every Word. And it is for the simulationist community. And they look at narrative medicine and how that can help us. And why don't we just get Dr. Errichetti and Ginny Drda to the table right now and start in on a conversation about narrative medicine and standardized patients and how this can be used in the medical community. Welcome to you both.
Great to be here.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we were just having an old home week conversation before we came on about the many ways in which it feels like the standardized patient simulationist community has very firm roots here in Philadelphia, Tony. And I think that's a beautiful place to start. We found out we've worked at a number of the same places over the years. And I guess I want to find out, you know, back in 1992 is when you started. Tell us, just give us the road from then until now.
Well, you know, at that time in 92, I was exiting out of my previous profession, which was I was a therapist. I was a psychotherapist and learned, one of the things I learned was narrative family therapy, the idea that, you know, family dysfunction is embodied in stories. But I realized I wasn't a very good therapist. I liked the stories, but I didn't really like to help people that much. You know, so I thought the world does not need another mediocre therapist. So miraculous, and I was also a professor of family therapy at Hahnemann and also at Chestnut Hill College, and used a lot of simulation to train, and then miraculously found out about the standardized patient field at Medical College of Pennsylvania. Diane Cohen, I'm not sure if you remember her. So one thing led to another. Found myself at the NBME, National Board of Medical Examiners in Philadelphia for about a year and a half, and really wanted to be just more of an educator. So for the next 20 some years, started SP programs in Philadelphia and New York, heavily involved with case development, which I really loved, which is the really fun part, as well as training SPs, you know, for that stuff and creating all the rubrics. And how I got into narrative medicine was, again, one of these happy accidents. A colleague of mine and I ran this program called Simulation Studio, and we would do conferences, inviting SPs and people. And we had a one-woman show. I don't know if you know Joy Cutler.
Oh yeah, Joy's a great friend.
Yeah, Anatomy Lesson. Do you know her?
Yes, her one-woman show. Absolutely. Yeah.
So in New York, we did a theater night, and she did her performance, and somebody came to it from Columbia, Deborah Starr, and she introduced herself and told me about the narrative medicine program at Columbia. And then I started to get involved, going to weekend workshops, which were just so much fun. It's just, for me, it's been the best educational program ever. The faculty is extremely open and inviting of people to share stories and figure out what these stories are about, and then decided to enroll in the certificate program, so which I'll finish up in the spring. So I've been doing this for the last couple years. And
So, oh no, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to expand a little bit or delve into a little bit the idea of Joy. So Joy's show is her experiences with certain health obstacles, challenges that she had in her life. And I want to clarify. So what you found or what you saw in that show was the ability of a story to somehow bridge the gap between health, like treating the patient, and what we learn.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I heard in it also was her reformulation of a kidney transplant into this fabulous story that went back to Russia and a curse. She since has, I think, reworked the story a couple times. And so I was just fascinated, A, by the story, and B, by the performance of it. And really then wanted to get back more into storytelling and trying to get people who are, really interested in art to have conversations. And over the years, this is where Ginny and I come in. Over the years, Ginny and I, we've done a lot of presenting together with a colleague from New York. And we would talk about what happens to the artist in us once we're working full time in this field. And so we, I told her about what was going on with me in narrative medicine. And so when COVID happened, it was like the perfect opportunity. Everybody's home, nobody's doing anything. So let's get people together and have conversations, 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah.
And to focus on a work of art, a poem. It could be a poem or a painting or a photograph, something, and just have a conversation about it, in which it's not an art class. It's really just people putting the pieces of a puzzle together to try to figure out what the art means. And in your work in absurdist literature and writing, there may not be a meaning that's really evident. It's like the fun of struggling to figure out, what does this mean anyway? What is this play about? I've seen a couple of your plays. And so I think the fun of it is us getting together. Working with Ginny has just been a find. She immediately got the whole point of this. And it's really helpful, as to have a co-therapist. I'm not saying this is therapy. This is one of our ideas, is that you may find this therapeutic, but it's not therapy. But it really is helpful to have someone else also listening, participating in this conversation. It's an extended conversation with anybody that wants to join us.
Yeah,
we started a website, and
yeah, and we'll make sure we get it up on it's listening to every word, right? That's a great time, Ginny. Let's get you in the conversation and talk a little bit about, your trajectory as an actor and as a writer, and as the director of patient simulation, or your patient education.
Trained the actors, yes,
Tell us about. Tell us about it. You're working with the standardized patients at the Sim Center up in New York.
Right. So my trajectory was, I came to New York from Ohio after growing up the 6th of 9 children in a household filled with a lot of song and story. And so story was always a big part of my life. And moving into acting was sort of a natural progression. And then moving from Ohio to New York was also a big leap. But when I came to New York, I auditioned commercially and on stage and found this sideline gig of being a standardized patient, playing a patient, as you know, to help medical students and other healthcare providers work on their communication skills. And there are 8 teaching hospitals in New York. So it was actually, it became a pretty regular project, gig, if you will. And then as the New York Simulation Center was being built, one of the doctors with whom I'd worked for many years as a patient, as a standardized nurse, asked if I would like to be part of that institution, at that building, that amazing simulation center. So I have been with the New York Simulation Center, which is a joint partnership between NYU and City University of New York, for almost 9 years. And what I do is I recruit actors, I train them to play different cases in different scenarios. So it can be different diseases or illnesses or emotional or psychological cases. And it's been really eye-opening to see how the individual story of the actor comes into the role that's written for them, and how they're able to mold it into something that is unique, but also standard enough that several actors can play that same case and still have sort of a standard that the learners come in and experience. And that storytelling piece has always been a driving factor. So when I discovered narrative medicine, probably about 2 years ago, and I heard Tony was also doing things with narrative medicine, it became this sort of natural partnership of saying, hey, this is an interesting piece of a new modality to explore. And I just love the exploration of art and how it heals and helps encourage creativity in people. And it's been a joy working with Tony and to explore creativity with the audience that comes to our workshops. And I want to say community more than audience, because there's a real give and take. It's really an engaging community that is very interactive, and it's been just a joy and brought us here.
So is there, if you're looking at narrative medicine overall, and for either of you, a question, or I guess I'll ask this one of you, Tony, and then I'll jump back to you, Jenny, with another question. So your studies in narrative medicine at Columbia, it is looking to help the patient and the physician to dig deeper into important information that can help in the healing of the patient. Is that fair? Or
Yeah, I think that it was started about 20 years ago by Rita Sharon, who's an MD and also a PhD in English, and her colleagues. And I think the idea was to kind of erase this artificial split between data gathering, which doctors do very well. They're scientifically competent medicine of gathering data, diagnosing illness, prescribing treatment. But what the missing piece is, what does the illness mean to the patient? What is their suffering like? How are they experiencing the disease process? And so narrative medicine was really intended to get physicians to pay more attention to the stories that patients tell about their condition. And again, to kind of close this gap, this artificially created gap that to me is based on a business model. When you've got 7 to 12 minutes to talk to a patient, you're not going to have a lot of time to get into their story. So it started by helping physicians to appreciate the meaning behind the disease process, the illness, but also it provided a kind of an oasis, a clearing for physicians and other healthcare people to get together, take a break, and without directly talking about the stresses and burnout that they're feeling, it was instead to re-experience that through art and literature and painting and photography. So the humanities become a surrogate for for people, for, patient work, all those feelings that maybe don't get voiced about how you're feeling about patients, because there isn't time to do so, gets brought up through the discussion of art, often. That's why we say in our sessions, even though it's not therapy, it feels therapeutic to just take a break and focus on art for an hour and listen to each other. So the field has moved from working with physicians to any field that deals with people where listening is required, where mindful listening is really important to the learning process, and also any field in which you have maybe a lot of contact with your colleagues, emotions come up. So it's a way to kind of indirectly deal with a lot of the feelings that come up in our work. And so Sharon has said, there's been talk of changing it from narrative medicine to something else. So instead, I've heard her say the medicine part it's good for what ails you. The consideration of art is good for the soul. And so I think that's what we're really after. And so Ginny and I have eked out this niche in the field that doesn't exist, as far as I know, where working with standardized patients to get them to do some of the same things, surface some of their feelings through art, find an oasis, find a clearing, for them to come together, talk, have fun. It's fun talking about art. And
it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so the fun part is not to be minimized.
Right, because it's a road to deeper. I think I remember hearing about trips to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and sort of and analyzing, the different works of art and sort of using that as a as a way in. Ginny, let me ask you this. You talked before about how you saw that the different histories of your standardized patients, their emotional worlds and the stories that they had in their life, even though they need to be standardized across different locations, or so the learners are getting the same experience, you were seeing a richness that was coming through in the portrayal. Is that what you see?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And a lot of the SPs, standardized patients that I work with now, have shared with me pieces of their background and say, hey, can I add this into the case? And usually it's backstory that may not even be discussed with the learner, but it's something that really brings them into the role. And a lot of them say that for them, it's therapeutic, it's cathartic, and it's really remarkable to watch an actor bring themselves into the space and know that it's a safe space to explore these feelings, which can be very difficult to reenact several times, but for them to go into that vulnerable space and offer it in a place where a learner can benefit from that, because who isn't vulnerable as a real patient? I mean, we all are. So when the actor can do that, it's a gift. It's just such a gift to see them bring themselves into the room, their real self, their authentic self, into the work that can be grueling. You have to do a case that's getting bad news, and you have to do that several times in a row during a day. And so it's nice for them to check back in and be able to say, okay, this is the role that I'm putting on. I'm bringing myself to it, but it isn't me. So it's such an interesting blend of reality and simulation. And it's wonderful when it can come into that beautiful combination that really serves the healthcare community and serves the artist.
These interactions are a place, just to give it a little bit of a wider frame, where both the student or the learner and the standardized patient are able to work through. I mean, I guess in some cases it's a testing situation, right? But in other ways, it's a way for them to get the practice to have the difficult emotions and the difficult conversations within a safer space, as you say. We were talking a little bit earlier about how the virtual world has compressed what that interaction looks like, because it's being done virtually now. How is that for either one of you? How have you observed the changes since March um, in how that's affecting those interactions? Or
Jenny, I'm going to leave it up to you because
Okay.
we at work, we haven't moved in that direction quite
you
yet.
can punt,
Well,
Jenny, if you want.
that's all right. That's all right. I can speak to this a bit. And what it has brought is previously when we were working in a room together, actually in a room together, there's a physical space and there's almost more of a theatrical quality in some ways, in a realistic way. But what working on a small screen requires is a little more intimacy, because you can't hide. We in casting have to make sure that we're finding people who are the age that we're playing.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's changed a little bit. And also, how do we indicate what's happening with the learner? I mean, the patient. How do we make sure that their behavior is being read on the screen? If they're tapping their foot, nobody can see that. So we have to lift everything up a little bit. So if there's a nervous tick or something that happens behaviorally, we're finding ways that, you know, they have to do this by, you know, doing something subtle, not so subtle, but from the waist up. So those are some subtle staging things that have happened, but really the intimacy is what's there. And being able to communicate through a screen and be able to look at your cameras if you're looking at someone's eyes. It's so much like film work, and it's so much of it's a different acting skill that's being practiced. But I think it's working. We're having a lot of learners come through, and it's actually been, it's getting to be just as busy as it was before COVID, with simulations happening in the small screen. So
I would imagine the possibility opens up, though, for some pretty intimate. I mean, if telemedicine is going to be focused on counseling, and or people are going to need counseling proper and also just counseling about their health related problem, then, you know, it's as you were saying, Tony, when we were talking before, it's now on the table as a way of helping and being helped.
Yeah, I think it does require a different mode of communicating with patients. My daughter's a physician out in Denver, and so during COVID, she's had to see a lot of her patients, virtually, and you can get quite a bit of information. It is different without all the perhaps all the other distractions. There, as we know, the physical exam is the big challenge. But what I really like about it, and I used to do this when I was a therapist. I do home visits or interview SPs that I was going to hire when I was in New York by Zoom. You get a chance to look at their house, and see what's going on in the background. You get an idea of how people live when you go into their home and look around. That I was always surprised the difference between how patients were in my exam office and how different they were at home. And suddenly I'm learning a lot. So I think there's the possibility of that with telemedicine. You lose something, but you might gain something as well. I mean, doctors can do a lot of things. Take me on a tour of your house while you're here, show me.
Get to know you in ways that.
Yeah, I want to see your, do you have any extension cords on the floor? I want to, we used to do these exercises in which we'd go into patients' apartments, SP's apartments, elderly people, where the purpose would be to examine their living situation, look in their fridge, that sort of thing. So anyway, there's a possibility of doing that, I think, with in this age of virtual in Zoom. It can take us places. Out of the exam room, but maybe into their home and some interesting.
Into a whole new narrative about their world. I'm at the New York Public Library today, but so that, it is interesting, the settings that get chosen for, and what do you want people to know about your house, or don't you? Those are all interesting new questions that we're that we're up against. I want to get back though to something you said when we were first talking, and you were talking about being a psychotherapist way back when. Did you say you didn't like helping people, or was
No,
it?
it wasn't that. I was in it for the stories.
I
but
misinterpreted.
and maybe I've had thoughts I should go back to it now because you know what they say about therapists. They become therapists because they can't pay for all the help they need, so they become therapists. And I think that was probably to some degree my situation. So I was really interested in the stories. Before that, I was a probation officer for 5 years, and so that was all about. I'd given up hope of helping
Stories.
anyone, and I would just ask these guys, tell me about how you freebase cocaine. How do you maintain a heroin habit? You can't get a job, but yet you've got $100. This is 1973. How do you maintain $100 a day heroin habit, but you can't work? That's really fascinating to me. And then I'd also take their pictures on top of it. So it was, for me, it was all about, tell me your story without the hope that I can really help you, you know. And so I don't know. Also, just being an SP trainer is you can't pay people enough money to not be depressed. If somebody's really depressed and you give them $50,000, they're probably gonna still stay depressed, but you could pay people $25 an hour to be depressed. So I thought, this is easier. This is like the path of least resistance. It's more fun making people sick on cue and then curing them. So, I mean, I'm not being facetious. I really thought that this is a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting. And I just love working with these adults that take on illness. And as Ginny's mentioning, it's incredibly stressful. It's like a factory. And so part of our work with them in narrative medicine is to try to, I don't know, get them to relieve some of the stress that they're under.
Ginny, when you were growing up, did you always know you were going to head for the stage?
No.
Or the life in New York City?
Big life.
The big life?
You know, I think it was always in me. I think that acting it became a natural thing, but I was not one that would step out on stage initially when I was younger. I would write things. I found acting a little bit in high school, and then got a degree in communications and started a small theater company there that worked with family theater. And then there was an aha moment in an acting class that I had in Cleveland, where once I dipped in and brought myself into the role, it was unbelievably inspiring and became the thing that I knew I wanted to continue to pursue. So it was sort of an evolution for me. And then coming to New York and studying at the Actors Studio was a remarkable experience that, again, opened my eyes to just the vast opportunities as an actor, and also the work of being an actor. So that's the long story, is that I didn't quite know, but I discovered it as I came along the way. And I've rediscovered that writing was always part of my life in little pockets here and there. And I've been rediscovering that during this time. And it's been very exciting. And
yeah, I want to get to the talk about listening to every word in the workshop. But I want to back up just for a second. When you said you brought yourself into the room for the first time, or that moment, that aha moment that you had, what did you do to do that? Was it something conscious that you did? Or did you just suddenly sort of feel like, oh, this is what it's like when I bring my true, authentic persona into this character? This is what it feels like?
It was partly due to an excellent acting teacher who created space for me to be able to do that. And I had been going through something very difficult at the time and kept it separate from everything that I was really, working on in the acting class. And then there became a point where I needed to bring it in. And when I brought it into the role, it was, it was cathartic and powerful. And a little scary because I thought, oh my gosh, like this is me sort of exposed here in this role, in this sort of covering of this character. So it was through that acting teacher and through that moment that I realized that it wasn't just presenting a role or putting on a character, it was actually embodying that character, being in the story and connecting it with things that had happened in my own life. So that's where that aha occurred.
Mm-hmm. But it's so great because now I would imagine in your work, you're using that as a lens through which you are guiding others to bring that authenticity into the room, and particularly in that sort of virtual medium.
Yes.
When working in that way. Let's move to, and I just want to make sure that you both know that Dr. Peitzman, Steve Peitzman's reaching out and in the room and saying hello. Tony, to you.
I see. Yeah, I see his
yeah.
cat. Hi,
Steve was
Steve.
on with us
Long
last
time.
week, and
Yeah.
such a big part of, for so many of us, the trajectory of all of this over the years. Let's talk about listening to every word and what you guys are working on. And I want to make sure we give time to illustrate what that experience is.
Listening to every word, I think it's kind of our motto. It's our mission is to get all of us practicing listening to every word from each other and really taking that seriously. And because I'm just not sure that we're told that listening is important, but I don't know that we really have good practice in learning to listen. So in the workshops, we either do a close reading or a close listening to art. But then as I said, it's not really an art class. We're really here to listen to each other's interpretations of the art and really listen to what other people are saying about it and build our comments on what others have said. And so that's where the community part comes in, that we're really interested in learning from each other. But the basis of that is really listening closely. And it's also something that SPs have to do. They have to listen carefully when they're in the role. They have to listen to the learner or the examinee. They have to listen to the questions that are being asked. They have to respond. They have to listen closely to the subtext of maybe their nervousness and so forth. So the listening to every word really refers to the effort that we place on getting people to slow down and listen carefully to what's in the text as well as what each of us are saying. Yeah.
Do you think that, two things I'm thinking as you're speaking. One is that, do you think that close listening is something that actually does have to be taught, particularly in a world where there's just so much stimulus coming in?
Well, I think it has to be modeled. Empathy comes from the experience of someone really carefully listening to you. If I were, working with residents, I would really try to emphasize, a certain kind of debriefing that really emphasized listening to the residents, listening to the med students carefully, and feeding back to them what you've just heard. I think it does have to be taught, but how you teach it, I think it has to be modeled. You have to have an experience of it rather than it be a didactic experience, which it often is. Like empathy often is taught, rather than experienced by someone. So I think that what we try to do is to model in these workshops the whole endeavor of listening closely to each other. And I think, Ginny, you should chime in on this as well. I think part of our role as facilitators is the challenge is to really listen to people. I'm not a great listener often. My mind goes off in different directions. So I'm kind of doing what I need to do for myself. And I don't know, Ginny, what's your experience?
Yeah, I feel like it's not only has to be taught, but it has to be practiced. It's like a continuing practice. Like we all have to practice it, because to really listen takes attending to something.
Yeah.
And putting aside your own whatever as on your agenda, to really listen to the person, the piece, whatever it is that you're trying to listen to. So I think that practice is really key. So we do try to model it, and we are not experts, but we're practicing along with the group and trying to help give an example of what that listening looks like.
Yeah, the practice piece, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really important. It is something that has to be done repeatedly in order for you to get it. And so I know it's helped me to pay more attention to what I'm reading, what I'm looking at. Tina, you mentioned the Met. I'm in New York back and forth. Instead of going to the Met, looking at 100 works of art, I try to look at 2 or 3 closely.
Yeah.
Talk to myself, about what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I do that. Just really focus in on a couple of works and see the depth of what is
right.
in the
but the practice is important. These workshops are not meant as like a one-shot didactic. It's intended to be, it's a community of practitioners. And
so is it open to people who are not, when you say it's a community of practitioners, it's open to everyone now.
Yeah.
And you okay, good. So if I wanted to come in, which I have, but if I was listening today and hadn't been a part of it, I could reach out to you if I was interested, if we were to put the website up for you. Ginny, we talked about maybe jumping into an exercise. Do you think this is a good time?
A sample of what we do in the workshops? Sure. So normally we present a piece of art. It can be a picture, a poem, some prose. So for tonight, I'm going to pull up a poem, and we would normally have 2 volunteers read to do that close reading, to hear one person read it and then another person read it. And all of us who are participating would listen in and think about what words jump out, what might confuse you or really resonate with you. So for tonight, I'm going to pull up an excerpt of a poem that I've written, and I'll keep it on the screen and I will read it to you, and then we'll follow up with some conversation about how it resonated and what jumped out at you. So I'm going to share my screen. And
then Tina, you and I are going to discuss it.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, this is new to Tony too.
Good. Okay, great. We have not seen
new
this.
to me too.
This is a previously undisclosed creation.
Right. I'll enter it together.
And so, Ginny, do we want people also as well to be commenting in the chat if they are so inclined?
That'd be great.
Sure. That'd be great.
All right.
So this is an excerpt from Treasures Unearthed, an ode to a rutabaga. Rooting below, adorning the dirt, as impending snow scurries in. What secrets lie waiting in ghostly white skin? This underground ornament does not lament its fate to land upon a plate. Oft overlooked, it yearns to be cooked. What other baubles are buried below and hang hovering beneath an earthly covering? This ungainly beauty, brought in from the cold, when warmed and attended, turns into gold. So here's where I ask Tony, Tina, anyone who'd like to talk about what questions or thoughts you have about this poem.
Right off the bat, an ode to a rutabaga. I don't even know what a rutabaga is. So I'm assuming it's a root vegetable of some kind. I love this line, what secrets lie waiting in ghostly white skin. And I don't know. So that line kind of confuses me. Is it the white skin of the rutabaga, or is it something else? Again, I don't know what a rutabaga is. I could look it up, but
it's a big bulbous, isn't it? it is a white and purplish thing. Is
Is that
this
what it is?
true?
It
Right?
is.
Yeah, and it's a very good root vegetable if I've got the right one in my head.
Mhm.
What secrets lie waiting in ghostly white skin? Like what, I wonder, like what secrets possibly can be in this root vegetable? Is it the secret of growth? I'm not sure.
That's
What,
yeah, that's an
what else do
interesting.
you see? Yeah.
Well, no, I was just like, when you said what secrets lie waiting in ghostly white skin, it's sort of an unusually beautiful, and if I'm thinking of the right vegetable, beautiful, and also at the same time kind of strange looking vegetable, but so really used in the right way is really satisfying. But it is an odd looking, kind of unusual, strange, on the fringe, at least in my growing up, vegetable.
Is that the one with like the purple
I
veins going through it, or?
Is that right, Ginny?
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
we're
It is.
thinking of
It
the
is. I'm
same
not
one.
sure.
We'll have to do a screen share of a rutabaga and
That would have been a great
and
idea.
have. But what's interesting to me, off of what you said, Tony, is what secrets lie in that ghostly white skin. Then led to the next paragraph, which I was thinking of them being these underground, sentient beings in a way.
Yeah.
This underground ornament, because it does look like an ornament, like that you'd put on a tree. But then I felt like it had a character or a personality attached to it. And
Yeah.
when it said does not lament its fate to land on a plate, I was like, oh, it's because I don't know. In those first stanzas, I like developed. They're kind of characters, like, I could see a dancing rutabaga on a commercial or something, and it oft overlooked, it yearns to be cooked. So then I didn't feel so bad that it was getting cooked, because I actually felt sorry for it from the first paragraph into the second one. Anyway, that's what's going on in Tina Brock's mind today.
Yeah, that's interesting because it doesn't labor under the same kind of thinking that humans have to. Like, humans are intensely aware of their fate, that we're going to die someday. But it doesn't. The rutabaga is different. Maybe is the rutabaga a more evolved creature in that it doesn't lament its fate the way humans do. So much of art and literature is about death and avoiding fear of death,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
What other baubles are buried below?
Yeah, it is interesting that you're kind of digging into the, like,
Literally
when we
digging.
think of root vegetables sometimes, and
Yeah.
like it's like surrounded in dirt and worms and whatever else happens, like all the good things that happen in the earth, but sort of bringing out this beautiful thing that, as I was alluding to before, Tony, when it's prepared correctly, is like rutabaga mashed, and just is so really wonderful.
Yeah, the baubles. So it's almost like I think of baubles. That word just reminds me of costume jewelry. So I'm not sure if. So it's an interesting image, that below the surface in this dirt are treasures that are going to become food for us.
Gold, yeah.
It's turned into gold. It's like alchemy.
Did you write this, Jenny?
I did write this.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm seeing dancing rutabagas all over the place. Well, also, I got out the Christmas ornaments finally today, and there was a paper mache rutabaga.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, and hanging on the tree.
Yeah.
So this is an example of what you all would, and in each workshop, is there a different, I know the night I attended, it was poetry from different authors and a similar exercise. Is it always written?
It's not always written. Sometimes it's an image, a photograph, a painting. And the key is that we're all seeing it for the first time. Although if it is something we've heard before, we try to see it with fresh eyes and fresh ears. So we usually select something that has been published or has been in the world. Sometimes we'll use new pieces such as this. And sometimes have the artist present like we do tonight, so that afterwards we might have a chance to speak to the artist about their creativity, what inspired the piece, and it tends to inspire others to be creative as well. So after we've shown the piece and talked about the piece, we then offer a prompt, which I'm going to pull this down. We offer a prompt, which is just an open-ended question that typically the participants will write about, and they'll have 4 minutes to do a free write, and it can take whatever form they would like. It can be a poem, it can be prose, it can be a sketch. So for tonight, I will just offer a verbal prompt for Tony and Tina to speak about something unearthed.
Oh, something unearthed.
Immediately, I would write this if there was a writing prompt. Immediately, it reminded me of a dream I had in which my mother had died, and it was true. She had died a while ago, and I was trying, and she kept popping out of the grave. She unearthed herself, and I kept putting her back in.
In your dream?
Oh,
Yeah, that was my dream.
Do you analyze yourself?
Yeah,
What did you come up with on that one?
well, I just, she was like a ghost. I wanted
Oh my gosh.
I wanted her to be gone. She had lived an unhappy life, and why are you coming back to this world? I get it.
Yeah.
You're gone, and so you need to go back where you always said you wanted to be, in heaven.
wow.
So anyway, that's what the prompt immediately responds. And so we try to get people to just give their first impression
Their
without
first
censoring.
thing.
Yeah. And
I
to just
see.
read it without,
Yeah.
explaining.
Yeah.
How about you?
Amazing. That's
So I'm still back on rutabaga, but I think that it's making some sort of a connection in another part of my mind to onion, because bulbous white thing, because during this time of COVID, it's been quite a journey into the self, for me anyway, on many different levels, lots of life shifts and things happening. And there's these sort of layers that are getting peeled back little by little. A lot of it's being isolated. A lot of it is finding new ways, like a lot of people are, I think. And sort of, it does feel like this unearthing of like something being born, which is a little strange at my age. But I guess if we hold on to the idea that we're a constant work in progress. So that's what it actually brought up for me, was this idea of dusting off the dirt and like peeling back the layers and discovering new fresh growth underneath of it.
And also I was wondering, since you mentioned onion, tears come with onions.
Yeah.
Is that part of it?
Oh, quite a lot. Yeah. There's so much of all of that underneath of it. Yeah.
What I'm noticing is this connection between Tony's dream of unearthing and death, and Tina's rebirthing and new life from whatever this death is, and all brought up by a rutabaga, which just gets left at the bottom of the bin. And I think, what do you do with a rutabaga if you write a poem?
We will never eat them the same way again.
Yeah.
Right?
Or we will find them and eat them. Or order them.
Right. I see some comments too.
Yeah, I know Jesse's chiming in over there, Jesse Delaney. Go ahead, guys. You can feel free to bring them in and as well. I see Trudy Greyboys is here, and Robin is asking, she's interested in the conflict between the willing sacrifice made by the rutabaga and the human eater.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's definitely a symbiotic relationship.
Yes. Which then takes me to another place, which has not been asked for. I don't know if you guys know does anyone know, but involves food. The film, The Phantom Thread.
I don't know that.
No, Daniel Day-Lewis. And anyway, involves food and a very odd, interesting relationship between the,
Yeah.
but I digress.
Eater.
But look it up. I think you'd like it. I think you'd like it, Jenny. Jesse's asking, are you familiar with the writings of Leslie Jamison, particularly her book, The Empathy Exams, which begins with an examination of her time as a standardized patient?
Yeah, I read that a while ago when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, what's
I'm gonna
interesting
that.
about empathy and art, I don't know if you know this, but empathy really, that term came about in the 18th century when there was more character-driven literature. And so empathy, Einfühlung, it was a German term, which meant, to feel into. And mainly it was the feelings that come up with a really well-crafted piece of art. It didn't have to do with psychology. It had to do with feeling what was in the art itself, the capacity to be moved by art.
Wow.
So I was just always fascinated by that idea of where empathy came from.
That's
And
fascinating.
yeah. And so the direct relationship to physicians, they have to kind of experience the stories of the patient as if it's a work of art in order to feel it, to feel into it. You have to be curious. And so we try to engender in these workshops to just have fun with rutabagas and other root vegetables.
What do you all find in the workshops has surprised you about what happens in the workshops?
Oh, what has surprised me is that it has, I'm going to use the word unearthed again, but the creativity of people who are willing to not only write to the prompts, but actually share it. And sometimes it's in the conversation or sometimes it's posted on our website, but I've heard from people who have this dormant creativity that they're allowing to bubble up to the top. And to me, that's been just such a wonderful surprise. And it's exciting to know that somehow what we've done has inspired that for someone, because I do firmly believe in that the healing power of art, whether it's shared or not. The creation of it itself is something I think that's essential, not just peripheral, but essential to our humanity. Sounds pretty profound, but that is what I think.
No, I would agree. For me, the most satisfying part is, well, it's not only the conversation, but I'm frequently astounded by the writing that comes up during the prompts and how people are really inspired to suddenly be creative. And, there's a discussion, but then when you write about it, you then commit to your thoughts and feelings about something. Maybe it's a memory, like I just, with my mother, you never know what's going to come up. So I'm just constantly blown away by how articulate people can be in writing once they're given that opportunity. And I just love the camaraderie and conversation. I'm surprised that people keep showing up.
Would you do the workshops in person before the pandemic, or is this a coming together that occurred since we've been?
It's mostly been because of COVID. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for COVID. I've done a few workshops. I wouldn't even know how to do it live anymore. I've gotten so used to doing it this way, but I think we started this in late March when people started to get furloughed and
want connection.
People need a connection. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe it also encourages the fact that you are virtual and in different spaces coming together? Do you think that it allows people, perhaps in some way, to be a little bit more vulnerable, or because they are in the comfort of their home, they don't have 20 pairs of eyes on them. They have their camera lens or whatever, however they're responding. But I do wonder about that, if it isn't a way for people to share in a safe way.
Yes, definitely. I think what we also one of the guidelines of the workshops is that everything is kept confidential, because it can bring things up that are surprising to even the person who thinks that they are immune to things coming up. But I think it absolutely provides an opportunity for people to find a safe space that it is just, and it's encapsulated within an hour. That's the other thing that's kind of beautiful, is that we dive really deep and then come right out of it, and then we leave it where it is. But it may resonate in other parts of the participants' lives. So sometimes we'll get emails afterwards saying, I just have to thank you because this really brought up this for me or that for me. So a lot will surface because it's a quiet space where you have to attend to the piece of art, and you have to be engaged in it. And you can also choose what level of engagement you want to have. You can keep your camera off. We encourage everyone to keep them on. But if you feel like you just want to write in the chat, you can do that. You can speak up. So it's really been an opportunity for people to come to a space and see something together, which to me is almost like seeing a piece of theater, because afterwards you can talk about how it resonated with you. So it's like seeing this little tidbit of something that's live and happening in the moment, and you're experiencing together and then talking about it. So that's where I think the this medium allows for a little bit more openness.
Yeah.
And
I think one thing too that I don't know if you're familiar with this podcast. My wife told me about this, the history of literature. And it's based on the idea that people aren't reading anymore. And so it's a really quirky podcast. A guy will talk about authors and go into it. It's like a personal history, his personal history of some of these authors. And so I think that's an issue too, that I don't know, that I was an English major originally. Maybe that's where it all started. So it is a way to get back to literature, which is hard. We have some complex poems that we deal with in a short period of time. They have to be both complex and enriching and satisfying. So there is a whole science, I think, to trying to find the right thing that will work for half an hour. And because again, there are multiple parts to this. So we devote about 25, 30 minutes to the discussion before the writing comes. So.
Well, we want to encourage, and it's okay to encourage people to contact you, to reach out, to go to the website and find out more. And I would love to continue this conversation, but as you just pointed out, an hour is a good amount of time, and it leaves us thinking. And I just want to thank you both, Ginny Drda and Dr. Tony Errichetti, for being here today, sharing your how you all are staying connected during this time. And I look forward to seeing where the workshop goes, to being a part of that, hopefully coming back in and experiencing it again. And wishing you both very well in 2021. And thanks for sharing your time.
Oh,
thanks,
so
Tina.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
I'm interested to see where all of this goes. Rutabagas included. And thank you, Ginny, for your beautiful poem.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
And thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. I'm so glad that you've taken this time to be together, and we'll hope that you'll be with us next Saturday. That's December the 26th, right? The day after Christmas, when Vijay Padaki will be with us. And Vijay is been involved in theater for over 60 years as a theater practitioner, as a psychologist, as a behavioral scientist, and he is was around when the Little Theater, Bangalore Little Theater in Bangalore, India, was formed back in 1960. And so he will be joining us next Saturday, December the 26th at 5 p.m. And we hope you'll be a part of that conversation. If you're on the IRC's mailing list, you'll get an email and a link to that. And we'd love to have you join us. So with that in mind, just wishing you the very best of weeks ahead. Be safe, be healthy, and we hope to see you next Saturday. Happy holidays from everyone here at the IRC.